Why did I know something was off but didn't push to hear what was troubling her over the phone? Why did I just think she'd talk about it eventually? Maybe if I had listened, this wouldn't have happened. Stop it. It's not your fault. I feel the same. Maybe I pressured her too much with work. Even if not, I was there and should have noticed and helped. My best friend took her own life. As I offered incense at her funeral, I was nearly crushed by regret. Joshua felt the same. Whenever we spoke, we only had words of self-blame. After the funeral settled down, I went to my best friend's parents to apologize for not doing anything when I noticed something was off during our call. Joshua also apologized for being nearby because of work but not being able to respond. The parents of our close friend told us it wasn't our fault and asked us not to blame ourselves. Even after hearing those words, Joshua didn't lift his head for 5 minutes. As we were about to leave after the funeral, Father stopped me. There's mail at home. It might be something important, so don't forget to pick it up before you head back. Why did our close friend send it to my parents' house, not mine? Feeling uneasy, I decided to stop by my parents' house alone on the way back. What was delivered to my parents' house was an envelope. It was slightly bulging, suggesting it contained several letters. With trembling hands, I cut the edge of the envelope with scissors to take out the contents. The letters were folded in 3, about 4 pages in total. Upon opening the first page, it was written in large letters, "Please read without your husband finding out." Confused, I moved on to the second page. At the top of the second page, there were large letters that seemed like the title of the letter. Just by reading the title, I could guess what was written in the letters that followed. If my guess was right, the following pages would contain something dreadful. My hands began to shake, but I gathered my courage to continue reading. There, an unbelievable truth was written. I am Everly. A 27-year-old office worker you'd find anywhere. Currently on leave just after giving birth. My husband, Joshua, 6 years older, owns 3 restaurants. Originally, he was an office worker like me, but while we were dating, he suddenly announced he wanted to quit his job. I've always wanted to run a restaurant. I think if you get older or get married, it becomes harder to take such risks. If you're young, it's easier to bounce back from failure. So, do you think it's okay if I quit my job? At that time, Joshua was 29, wanting to act before turning 30. I was only 23 and, rather than being practical, I strongly felt I wanted to support and back my husband's dream. You know how many people just trudge through their jobs in their 30s and 40s without doing what they really want to? I think it's better to go all out and do what you want now. Just make sure, if it doesn't work out, you find a new job without moping around. Don't talk like I'm gonna fail before I've even started. Encouraged by me, Joshua quit his job and began preparing to open his own restaurant while gaining experience in a friend's diner. Joshua's focus and action towards his goal were impressive, and in just 2 years, he had nearly finished preparing to open his place. However, there was one problem that seemed insoluble. Still haven't found someone? Yeah. It's tough finding experienced people willing to work at a place that doesn't exist yet. Can't you wait until it is up and then put out an ad for part-timers? That'd be too late. If we don't find anyone by the time we open, the shop might not be able to operate properly. Joshua had been advised by an acquaintance from the restaurant he was learning from that it's better to secure an experienced right-hand person before starting the shop. Once the shop is established, becoming the owner means there will be various external tasks to handle as well. Moreover, there are many important tasks in the shop that can't be entrusted to part-timers. It would be tough for Joshua to handle everything by himself at the shop. Therefore, it seems advisable to have at least one person whom Joshua can confidently leave the shop with, even when he's away. However, finding someone experienced enough to entrust the shop to is not easy. Joshua was worried about this every day. Then, one day, I happened to stumble upon a post on social media by my childhood friend. Since my childhood friend Caroline had been working in restaurants for nearly 10 years, I decided to send her a message, figuring it was a long shot. The response was very positive, and it led to her being introduced to Joshua. Really, you're going to come work with us? Yes. I can help with setting up the place, and you'll let me handle some of its responsibilities, right? Yeah. In fact, I'll be relying on you since you have much more experience. I've always wanted to own my own place too. So, getting involved in setting up a shop and taking on a responsible role will be great experience for me. Is it that you can't go independent even after 10 years of experience in food service? It's more about money than experience. The pay in food service isn't great, right? So, I can't save up enough startup capital. Plus, opening a shop costs a ton. But, having only worked as an employee and not having much saved, I can't borrow the necessary funds. Surprisingly, people like Joshua, who have worked in other fields, have both the credit and the capital, so it's more common for them to start up before those who've been in food service for a long time. Food service is tough, huh? Yes, it is. So, getting involved in setting up a shop from the start is a good opportunity for me. I'm new to food service, so having Caroline around will be a big help. I'm looking forward to working with you. This solved the staffing issue. With the problem solved, Joshua's shop setup progressed rapidly, and it wasn't long before it opened. With my friend covering for my husband's lack of experience, the shop began to steadily increase its. However, Joshua didn't seem too happy. Hey, Caroline. The shop is doing well, but Joshua looks down. He won't say anything when I ask. Is there a problem at the shop? A problem? I don't think so. Maybe it's just the stress and fatigue from being busy and under pressure. Since the shop opened, Joshua has been working non-stop, right? Plus, he borrowed $200,000 to get the shop started. There's that repayment, and even though things are going well now, he might be anxious about sales dropping. It'd be weirder if he was all smiles and seemed fine, right? I see. Joshua just became a business owner, so maybe it's wearing on him. Exactly. So, Everly, make sure to support Joshua's heart well. I was convinced by my friend's words. Being a business owner, Joshua was facing pressures I couldn't understand as someone who worked at a company. Unlike my friend, I couldn't help with his work. But I could do things like letting him relax on his days off and making sure he could take a bath right after work. These were the only things I could do. However, my small gestures of care seemed to reach him, and gradually he began to recover his energy. As Joshua regained his energy, the shop became even more successful. Good things continued to happen, and 3 years after starting the shop, we got married, and another 3 years later, we had our daughter, Anna. Everything seemed to be going smoothly up to the present. However, what appeared smooth on the surface was only that, as behind the scenes, things had not been going well for a while. I was happy every day since our daughter was born. But now, I've started to notice my husband's spirits waning again. The last time he lost his energy, he didn't talk to me about it. I suspect he won't talk about it this time either, but I decided to ask him about his recent demeanor. Lately, you seem down. Is there a problem at the shop? To my surprise, he opened up about why he was feeling down. Actually, a new place opened up right near us. Their interior design cost more than ours, it's stylish, and their food is stylish too. They're basically a better version of us. So, they're taking our customers. It's been 3 months since they opened, and their momentum hasn't slowed. On the contrary, it seems like they're gaining more customers. If our sales keep decreasing, we might not be able to keep the shop running. And we've only paid off about half our debt. I regretted asking about my husband's worries. I wanted to hear about his troubles, but winning back customers taken by a competing shop is something I can't do. All I can do is nod along, turning into an all-affirming machine, continuing to listen to my husband's complaints and worries. I understand that there's nothing I can do to help with his work. Still wondering if there was anything I could do, I decided to contact my friend again and ask. The shop's not doing well lately, right? I heard from Joshua. Is there anything I can do? Probably nothing. The most you could do is help out at the shop to save on the cost of one part-timer's wages. I can't help at the shop, I have Anna. Right? That's why I said there's nothing. Joshua is trying hard to turn things around, so he'll be fine. Just keep supporting him like you have been. Got it. Then I'll leave the work-related support to you, Caroline. Please take care of Joshua. Yeah, I understand. Leave it to me. 6 years after my husband started the shop, Caroline and I had upgraded our relationship from friends to best friends. I could discuss anything with my best friend, and she would advise me. Whenever I had concerns about my husband, I consulted my best friend and received various pieces of advice. Her advice was always spot on, helping me out. Since my best friend assured me that my husband would turn the shop around, everything would surely be okay. This time, too, I decided to follow my best friend's advice and support my husband's spirit. Months later, just as my best friend said, my husband managed to turn the shop around. Rather than saying everything was going well, it would be more accurate to say fortune favored my husband, Joshua. The shop that was taking customers from Joshua's place closed down? It seemed to be doing so well. Why? Our new menu was a hit. We managed to win back the customers we lost. The competition got intimidated by my capabilities and decided to withdraw early. One menu item turning things around doesn't make sense, does it? Maybe they moved because they were doing better than expected and found a location with better conditions, like size or location. That's because they got scared of my abilities. Just watch, soon other shops will start running away too. Yeah. I'll look forward to that. With the competition gone, Joshua's shop sales rebounded. In fact, several eateries around him ended up closing. With fewer shops around, my husband's place saw even more growth in sales. In these times, it's not unusual for eateries to close. However, to this mere coincidence, my husband boasted, see? Just like I said, right? That area's practically my territory now. The Joshua Empire. Nobody can stand against me. He was utterly carried away. Getting carried away usually doesn't lead to anything good and often causes failure. I was worried that my husband might learn this the hard way. But his shop continued to thrive. As sales continued to rise, my husband got even more carried away. With things going this well, I'm thinking about opening a second location. That one, I'm planning to pretty much hand over to Caroline. Have you talked to Caroline about this? Yeah, I've discussed it with her, and she's on board. Really? I was worried she might leave someday because she's always wanted her own place. I plan to keep Caroline involved for a long time. I'm not letting her go. Hearing about the second location, I was dismayed at how carried away he was getting. However, learning that the new shop would be entrusted to my best friend, my dismay turned to support. The second location was quickly established. Having already created a successful eatery, my best friend turned it into a popular spot in no time. And with the second location thriving, my husband became even more overconfident, nearly reaching a state of runaway. Now the area around the second location is entirely the Joshua Empire. Next, I might try something different, like opening a bar. Not just any bar, but one that's upscale, exclusive, and invite-only. Aren't you getting a bit too carried away? Saying you might open a bar as if it's that easy to start up a new business? Don't worry. Everything I do turns out great. My husband was all smiles, exuding confidence. If I weren't family, such arrogance would be endlessly irritating. However, I knew of the hardships he'd overcome since opening his first shop. After all he's been through, I think he's earned the right to be a bit overconfident. I decided not to interfere with the bar's opening. The bar, being smaller, was completed even more quickly. I've never been to an upscale bar. So I asked my husband to let me see the new place before it opened. The bar's ready, right? Let me see it before it opens. Eh? The bar? No way. I can't show this one. I can't even tell you where it is. Why not? You showed me the first and second locations before they opened. Didn't I mention that the concept for this bar is a high-end speakeasy? That's why I want to keep it to a select crowd, like CEOs or at least senior managers. It's meant to be a place only known to certain people. So, I can't go because I'm too poor? That's not it. I'm not worried you'll spill the beans. But you never know how information might leak. I just don't want to take any risks that could compromise the concept. Fine. But at least show me some pictures of the inside. All right. I'll take some next time. While I wanted to see the bar, if I inadvertently leaked any information that could damage its concept, I couldn't bear that responsibility. Reluctantly, I decided to back down. However, even though I backed down, I couldn't shake off my frustration. When feeling this way, there's nothing better than venting to a best friend. Caroline, you know where the new bar is, right? Eh? Oh, yes. Since I work with Joshua, I need to know in case of emergencies. Being the only one out of the loop, it just bothers me. Hey, tell me secretly. No! Absolutely not! Everly, you don't need to know! Okay. Sorry, no need to get so upset. While talking on the phone with my best friend, I sensed an unusual atmosphere. However, I thought if she had any troubles, she would tell me. Her not saying anything meant it wasn't the time yet. I've always been there to listen to my husband's worries and complaints through her. If she ever came to me with her own troubles or complaints, I decided I would listen wholeheartedly. I had thought that, but that phone call turned out to be our last conversation. A few days later, my best friend took her own life at home. In her pocket was a family photo, and another family photo was reportedly found on the floor. The photo found on the floor was crumpled, suggesting it was likely clutched until the very last moment. While offering flowers at her funeral, I felt almost crushed by regret. Why, knowing something was off with Caroline, didn't I insist on hearing her troubles over the phone? Why did I think she'd talk about it eventually? Maybe if I had listened, this wouldn't have happened. Stop it. It's not your fault. I feel the same. Caroline and I were working together. Maybe I pressured her too much with work. Even if not, I was there and should have noticed and supported her. Whenever we spoke, we only had words of self-blame. After the funeral settled down, I went to my best friend's parents to apologize for not doing anything when I noticed something was off during our call. Joshua also apologized for not being there for her because of work. She always said she wanted her own shop. So when Joshua entrusted her with the second location, she was thrilled, feeling her dream was almost realized. The reason she took her own life surely wasn't work-related, so please don't apologize. Everly, don't blame yourself. If anyone should have noticed something was off, it was us. You used to play with Caroline a lot when you were in elementary school, right? She must be happy you came today. Even though Caroline's parents told my husband to raise his head, he kept it down for about 5 minutes. I was also told not to blame myself, but that's impossible since I had called my best friend just a few days before she took her life. After the funeral, as my husband and I were about to leave, my father stopped me. Since Caroline and I were childhood friends and our families lived close by, it wasn't strange for my father to attend the funeral. However, when my father stopped me, his expression wasn't one of sadness or loneliness, but rather one of concern, which I found puzzling. I asked my husband to go ahead to the car, and I stayed to listen to what my father had to say. There's a letter from Caroline at home. It might be something important, so don't forget to take it with you. It wasn't strange for Caroline to send something to my parents' house, as she knew their address. But Caroline also knew my home address. Why would she send it to my parents' house instead? After all, if she had something to tell me, she could have called or given it to my husband to pass on. Feeling uneasy, I decided to visit my parents' house alone. Sorry, I'm going to stop by my parents' house alone. You go ahead home. I'll get a ride back from my dad. Eh? Weren't you planning to stop by to pick up Anna from my mother? Well, you know, Caroline was my childhood friend, right? Just got to thinking about everything and didn't want to leave. Plus, you know, my parents knew Caroline well since we were kids. I ended up wanting to reminisce with them too. I see. Maybe you should stay the night. Maybe I will. I waved goodbye to my husband and got into my father's car to head to my parents' house. Upon arrival, my mother handed me the letter from Caroline. I didn't know what it contained. I went to my old room in my parents' house to check the contents alone. The letter from Caroline arrived in a slightly bulging envelope, indicating it contained several pages, given its slight bulge. With trembling hands, I cut the edge of the envelope with scissors. Upon cutting it open, items such as photos and a USB fell out. However, I decided to first read Caroline's letter, ignoring these items. The letters were folded in 3, totaling about 4 pages. Opening the first, it was written in large letters, "Please read without your husband finding out." Puzzled, I moved on to the second page. The top of the second page bore large letters that seemed to be the title of the letter. Just reading the title, I could guess what the following pages would contain. If I was right, what lay ahead would be dreadful. My hands shook, but I gathered my courage to continue reading. There, an unbelievable truth was written. After finishing the letter and learning the truth, I thought about pretending I knew nothing and escaping from my husband. But if he realized I knew the truth, I could be in danger. My daughter could also be at risk. Furthermore, if we divorced, I might lose custody of her. Acknowledging the risks, I decided I was prepared to confront my husband. I spent the night at my parents' house and returned home the next day. Around noon, as I got home, my husband was preparing to leave. "Ah, you're back? Where are you going?" "I'm going to Caroline's house. There are some documents there necessary for the shop. I've got permission from her parents." "Caroline's house? Take me with you." "No, I've already told her parents it would just be me, and some of the documents aren't for outsiders to see. I'll go alone." Knowing the truth, I could tell my husband was lying. Having been deceived by him before, it was now easy to see through him with the truth in hand. He insisted on going alone, so I saw him off at the door. It seems I need to act quickly too. Once he was out of sight, I also left the house. I also arrived at the apartment building where Caroline had lived. Standing at the entrance, I could hear the sound of someone rummaging inside. The door was unlocked, so I quietly entered the house. In the living room, my husband was frantically flipping through files he had taken from a shelf, unaware of my presence. "Looking for something you couldn't find?"
"Whoa! You scared me!"
Startled by my voice, my husband dropped the files, scattering the shop's documents across the floor. "What, you came? I told you not to come." While picking up the documents, he complained to me. But my words seemed to remind him, and Joshua's hands stopped. "Did you say you couldn't find what you were looking for?" I felt as if my husband had turned into someone else. He was clearly more guarded around me now. But his wariness didn't matter. I was here to tell him the truth, so I planned to speak openly. Caroline sent a letter to my parents' house. It contained everything about the past 6 years since you started the shop.
"What? A letter? It wrote about me? What did it say?"
Joshua seemed to be probing how much the letter from Caroline revealed. Unfortunately for him, there was no limit to what was disclosed. Caroline had told me everything. "So, you've become like a organized crime group associate now? Seems like you know everything." "Yes, starting from when the organized crime group came asking for protection money when you opened the shop."
"Damn! You really know it all."
"But back then, you stood your ground and refused to pay, right? Nowadays, the crackdown on gang is stricter, so they can't be as reckless as before." "That's right. But that was the beginning of my involvement. You first sought the group's help when a competing shop opened nearby, right?" "Yeah, they came back then. When that shop also refused to pay protection money, they just happened to stop by ours as well. And that's when the group offered to crush the competition for you if you paid them. Recalling that moment, Joshua looked a bit frustrated. He was desperate, fearing the shop couldn't survive. The idea of losing the shop, into which he had sunk $200,000 in debt, made it impossible to stay calm. It seems Caroline, who had worked hard alongside him, shared the same feelings. In their desperation, they succumbed to this devilish whisper. Nowadays, organized crime groups can't just barge into shops and wreak havoc as before. However, they managed to crush the competition through backdoor pressures and sending thugs. They intended to rely on them only once, but once you've formed a connection, it's hard to break free. The relationship with the Yakuza continued, and Joshua began giving a portion of the shop's earnings to them. You started paying them openly, becoming more and more dependent on them for various matters, it seems. I did. I got them to put pressure on the other stores around, making them disappear. So, you got rid of anyone who could oppose you around your shop, creating this Joshua empire, and got carried away with it. And that led you to the bar? You know quite a bit. That bar was used for overcharging, group members entertained important people there, and it was used for strategy meetings for future activities. That's why it was such a hard-to-find speakeasy. By the time the bar was established, Caroline was under a lot of pressure, wasn't she? Not just with the shop, but also helping with crimes? We were working together, so of course, I had her help. Caroline wanted out at some point, right? Being forced into criminal activities and earning resentment from others must have been tough. She got paid well for helping with the work. She had no right to complain, knowing what we were doing, and I couldn't just let her leave. So, you threatened her, saying you'd harm her parents, me, or worse if she betrayed us, to keep her in line. Talking to my husband made me feel sick. Sure, Caroline was cornered, but it was wrong to rely on these criminals even once. However, my husband, who got a taste for it and went further, seemed much worse. Caroline was pressured by both my husband and the group, unable to confide in anyone, and ultimately chose to end her life. Now that you know everything, I can't let you go. You'll take Caroline's place. Don't even think about going to the police. You know what happens if you do, right? I thought maybe you were struggling with being unable to break ties with them, just like Caroline, but it seems that's not the case. Huh? Money keeps coming in. Why would I think about cutting ties? Hearing my husband's statement, I let out a heavy sigh. Then, as if my sigh was a signal, 2 police officers entered. We've reached our limit. It's too dangerous, please step back. Okay.
What's this? You already called them?
Yes. You came here to dispose of evidence linking you and them, right? Did you find any evidence? No, nothing came out before you arrived. Caroline sent, along with her letter, evidence of your ties to the Yakuza and the crimes you've committed. Documents, photos, a USB. I stopped by the police station before coming here. You were already under surveillance by the police. So, I explained the situation and showed them the evidence of the crimes, and they came here right away. There are 2 officers here, but more are outside, so you can't escape. So, I'm done for. That's right. I thought maybe you were just struggling with your relationship with the crime group, so I asked the police to let me try to persuade you to come forward voluntarily. But we agreed if it seemed too dangerous, they'd intervene immediately. You started threatening me, so they came in. Why did Caroline send the evidence to you? It only puts you in danger. Caroline had decided to end her life. If she took the evidence to the police herself, she might have been detained, preventing her from ending her life. But if she sent it by mail, there was no guarantee it would be properly checked. It might have been dismissed as a prank. So, she wanted me to directly hand the evidence to the police. How dare you drive my best friend to this point? We'd like to hear more. Can you come with us to the station? My husband, until now, probably thought he wouldn't get caught by the police. Hearing their words, he quickly started to panic, clearly feeling the reality of the situation.
No, I was just deceived by them. I did various things, but I really didn't want to. I'm a first-time offender, so it won't count as a crime, right? If I go to the station, they'll just hear me out and give me a warning, right? I can go home immediately, right?
The two police officers grabbed my husband's arms and led him out of the house. My husband, either in slight resistance or unable to accept the reality, walked a bit slower than the police officers. When my husband was put into the patrol car, it drove away without the siren. Later, he was arrested and faced charges related to threats and extortion related to the shop. Additionally, he seemed to have been involved in fraud and illegal transactions, and was charged with these crimes as well. Despite being a first-time offender, the multitude of selfish crimes led to a sentence of 5 years in prison. It appears that members of the group connected to my husband were also arrested. However, it was mainly the lower ranks that were caught. The core members remained untouched. Although legislation against organized crime has progressed, they still find loopholes, continuing a game of cat and mouse. Nonetheless, with my husband and his associates apprehended, I believe my daughter and I are safe. Even if my husband were to be released, as he is not a member of the crime group himself, he wouldn't be able to harm us. And if any of them sought revenge, it would likely be directed at my husband for his failures. A move might be necessary just to be cautious. But naturally, I will divorce him. It seems his parents intend to sever ties with him as well, leaving him isolated upon release. Upon his release, there will be no shop left, and with the label of a criminal, his reputation will be gone. Moreover, without anyone to rely on, he might even incur the wrath of the group, potentially being hunted down. No matter how I think about it, my husband's future only seems bleak. He should spend this time reflecting deeply on his actions amidst the hardships. It's tragic that my close friend lost her life. My close friend had her flaws too. Despite her flaws, she endured enough pain to take her own life, yet in the end, she saved both me and my daughter. I've expressed my gratitude at my friend's grave and informed her that we've successfully moved. My daughter is still just a year old. Right now, she is my sole reason for living. I am determined to ensure her happiness at all costs, as I leave my friend's resting place behind.